It's Wednesday, the 19th of March, a day after unprecedented events, particularly in the history of our democracy. Good morning and welcome to your perfect morning starter right here on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka and I'm here with my colleagues. Hello guys, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Clearly trying to internalize all that is playing out. But we're here for you. I'm Kayode Okikulu. And yes, the big story. As you said, Bukola, this will go down in the nation's history. But the question is, will it be for good or for bad? How would we remember yesterday and the days that will follow? Well, those are the things we'll break down for you on the show this morning. But I can tell you that the weather here in Lagos is calm. We'll be showing you what it looks like in River State very soon, so not to worry.
Yes, indeed, Kayode, Jeffrey, if they say democracy is based upon the conviction that there are extraordinary possibilities in ordinary people, I wonder how the people of River State are internalizing the turn of events in their state at this point in time, particularly the mood at the government house. Of course, we'll be going there in a moment, but what would the next 6 months be like for the people of River State? Well, this morning is even more important, and we're going to go there, to find out, feel the pulse of the people, particularly after the decision that the president has taken in the suspension of the governor and the state assembly and the declaration of the state of emergency in River State. Jeffrey.
Yeah, we could debate as to the legality. That's why the lawyers will be here to break it down. Which we will. To break it down, the president has powers to declare state of emergency. It's in the Constitution. Perhaps trying to avert a situation is all part of the Constitution. To what extent he can either suspend elected officials, whether the governor, House of Assembly, that is debatable because it's not expressly written. So people argue that what exactly is he supposed to do and all of that. There are three people involved in this whole thing. In my view, the governor, as far as the issue of the working with three members of Assembly and demolition of the House of Assembly, well, he fought that battle all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court gave a verdict. Also, the House of Assembly gentlemen who have been on that back and forth. So at the end of the day, Kayode and Bukola, this for me ends in power, control and power at the end of the day. But I was a little disappointed yesterday with the president's broadcast for some of the dramatist personnel not mentioned. And yes, on Wike is the other dramatist personnel. He used the word other party. Let's not fool ourselves. There are two people fighting here. Yes, on Wike and the governor. With the greatest respect to every other player, like the House of Assembly, which there are some incredible gentlemen in that house. But those are proxy wars. The two people who have the power to resolve this problem at the very beginning, even after the Supreme Court has made a decision, is the governor and his predecessor. So there's nothing that was said expressly. I would have expected him, beyond the legalese, for moral reason, to mention Nyesom Wike in the mix. Now, so he has now a moral burden. After the decision that has been made within the laws, what will he do with Nyesom Wike, the FCT minister? You cannot absolve him from the problem. If he tells those boys, stop, they will stop. Sorry, those lawmakers, stop, they will stop. They are loyal. It's politics. I've kept saying this thing. Legalese will not solve the problem. Even this emergency action will not solve the problem. I can guarantee you that. It is still a political resolution that will give a permanent stop to this problem.
Very interesting sides playing out. Some have said, well, this is basically the federal government and the state government having an interface. The FCT minister doesn't come into play.
Which is why I use the word moral burden.
Exactly, because it's the president, the state governor, and the state assembly. And I think to a large extent, people have pushed that narrative as well, because when you come to the materiality of it, nobody voted for him to be either the governor or member of the state assembly. So when the chips are down, when the people are seeking good governance and they want to hold anybody accountable, it's been said that they won't say, FCT minister, why are you doing this? But you've made that important point. At the end of the day, we all know what is playing out. But hey, that is why we have the show for you this morning. So we're getting started absolutely with that declaration of a state of emergency in River State by the president. And as you can expect, we're diving right into it. We'll take a look at what the law says. It's very important because that's what guides us as a nation. What does the law say? What does the law not say about the declaration of a state of emergency? Hopefully, we'll give you clearer insights into that this morning.
And what can stakeholders do about what the law has not said, and how it affects their own interests in all this, in all of this? We'll be asking that very important question for you as well. But besides that, we'll also look forward to enabling more participation in nation building for the youth. We'll be speaking with the Minister of Youth, Ayodele Olawande, as we discuss government's initiatives towards driving empowerment for the youth and ensuring that the voices of supposedly leaders of tomorrow are heard.
All right, that'll not be all as we take on other things as well. It's going to be a big chat today, besides the brouhaha of politics. This is one of our very favorite part of the program, Innovate Our Breakfast with Leslie, where we spotlight on some of the women doing incredible things in different spaces. So today, in technology, what exactly are we checking out from this lady? Join us in just a moment.
And we're not leaving out food. It's very important. We're talking food security as well. So while we've talked about the politics of things, the governance of things, the business side of things, we talk about the food of things, if there's anything like that. And we're taking a look at Action Against Hunger to find out how successful an organization has been to that extent.
Besides that, we'll also be, diving into the creative space as we always do. We got you covered this morning as we speak with content creator Master Lee, going through his journey and finding out the challenges within the space. And of course, getting some of those interesting characters out for your delight from Master Lee this morning.
Yeah, and maybe get him to speak that his version of, it's clearly not Mandarin, but his own way of speaking Mandarin. So that's what we have for you on the show this morning. Be a part of it, hashtag CTV Morning Brief, or just send us a mail at themorningbrief@channelstv.com. But let's get right into what the dailies are saying this morning. Now, we're starting off with the Guardian newspaper. You, of course, know what will be the big story on the front pages, but let's just show you, right? The front page of the Guardian is first on our lineup, and you see Rivers pipeline explosion may cost $35.3 million loss daily as state of emergency begins. So when you begin to crunch the figures, that's a lot for the nation. But this came before the declaration of state of emergency. So the Guardian is looking like the economic aspect of this. But we're not going to be doing this alone. We're joined on this segment by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Sam Karbo, joining us from the nation's capital, Abuja. Senior Advocate, good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning.
Well, you can see the front page of the Guardian. It's actually black. It's in black. I don't know if it's meant to represent crude oil or to just represent the mood. But when you see the events that played up until the declaration of a state of emergency by the president, particularly this incident, which the president said was, well, security information pointed to saboteurs, would you say it was in order?
Well, criminality has been with us, and of course, you do not categorize economic criminality as one that is over and above other aspects of criminality that are rampant across the nation. If you are taking any decision on the basis of any incident, you have to actually have in mind that the people are very, very intelligent and they are attentive to what has been happening. Like I have said, for us here in the North, criminality in the form of banditry, terrorism, and all of that is not new. It's been part of us. We live with it and we are adjusted to it. And down there in the South, of course, that has been the situation for a very long time now. But yeah, there have been some innovations from the side of the presidency, especially during the time of President Musa Yar'Adua, who intervened, and his intervention had actually calmed down and abated or put to rest these forms of criminality, that is the vandalization of pipelines. So what am I saying here? I am saying specifically that that cannot be a reason and a justification for the declaration of a state of emergency. Definitely not.
Well, the events, of course, are seriously under scrutiny, and, you know, besides yours, there's been a flurry of reactions over the last 12 hours or so. But that's exactly, you know, what Blueprint is also talking about this morning, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Listen to this. Rivers joins Plateau Ekiti in Nigeria's 26 years of democracy. And you see the riders there. Fubara deputy lawmakers suspended for 6 months in first instance. Tinubu names ex-CNS Ekwe Ibas administrator. NAS duly constituted, says a rep spokesman. You know, we started off by talking about how...
Consulted, that is.
You said?
NAS duly consulted.
Consulted, says rep spokesman. And we started off by talking about how, you know, the other dramatis personae, borrowing the words of Jeffrey, were not mentioned in all of this. And the PDP has reacted to it. So for those affected who disaffected this morning, expressing some form of disaffection, what are the options open to them?
Yeah, definitely the courts are there. You mentioned the case of Darie 2004 and that of Fayose 2006. They were suspended by Obasanjo, President Obasanjo, and both suspensions were declared to be unlawful. And you see, there is a very strong, narrow debate here, which is whether or not Nigeria or any part of it can be ruled in any way other than as stated in the Constitution, because Section 1, subsection 2 is very clear. It said no part of Nigeria, and Nigeria in particular, can or should be ruled in any manner other than the way it's specifically lined out and set out in the Constitution. Yes, the president has the power of proclamation to claim a state of emergency in the state if the incident stated under Section 305 occur, or any of them, of course. You know, but the Constitution is very silent on whether or not that state of emergency include the power to suspend or remove. I would say definitely not removal, but whether or not it includes suspension, to me, that's a very gray area. If indeed the governor is the reason for the breakdown of law and order, and the president has the right to sustain law and order and public safety in the state, perhaps that can justify that. But beyond that, that's a very thorny issue that would be with us for a long while, because you know, presidents have their way of more or less setting the mind of the average person, because what has been done before, there is always the reason for it to be repeated. Because Obasanjo has done that, I think those who are dusting the books went back to it to say, okay, he did this in 2004 and 2006, and the heavens did not fall. But to me, when you are taking political decisions of that nature, you have to be very careful, because, you see, messages trickle down and they set the minds of the people, resetting us back to a situation where a state actor or an institution of the state can intervene in that manner. To me, it's not a very welcome happenstance.
All right. Senior Advocate, maybe we'll get to this Nigeria as well. Of course, I'm sure every paper today is carrying that headline with different inscription. Why Fubara was sacked as Rivers governor. President invokes Section 305 of the Constitution, cites breakdown of law and order, militants blowing up national assets, deputy governor, assembly members affected, Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas to act as sole administrator for 6 months. I also want to find out from you, I think Section 4, no, I think Section 6 or so, a section that talks about the input of the National Assembly. I know it was consulted. There was a meeting between the service chiefs and leadership of the National Assembly. But we still need the National Assembly to give force and effect to this declaration. Are we right, Senior Advocate?
Yeah, Section 305 is very clear. You know, the procedure for the declaration of a state of emergency starts with a gazette. You make the proclamation in a government published gazette, and thereafter, within you transmit that gazette with a letter requesting them to approve. That is both the Senate and the House of Representatives, and those institutions should, within 2 days, if they are in session, or 10 days, sit and deliberate on it and decide whether or not to approve. And that approval, to me, is necessary before you take those concrete steps. There is what we call procedural ultra vires. If the Constitution has, by its own wisdom, tells you the steps you need to take before you activate a power, you have to follow that procedure strictly. You don't bypass it. But what we have here, I think the president believes that the National Assembly can ratify the appointment of a sole administrator after suspending. No, I think, to my mind, the sequence would have been send the gazette to the National Assembly, seek their approval before you take the next step. Because let me ask this question: what if the National Assembly decline and refuses to give you the necessary approval? What happens to the days you've already removed the governor and instituted or appointed or foisted on the people as sole administrator? What happens to those days? So to me, sometimes, yes, reacting to such, to me, this is a political situation. Yes, the governor has by himself misconducted himself. The State House of Assembly have also said so. They've misconducted themselves. Those two key institutions of the state have actually disappointed the people of Rivers State, and I would ask them to look at themselves in the mirror and see whether or not they are not a disappointment to the people of Rivers State. But I would have expected that the presidency would be on a higher moral ground and play a much more circumspective role, considering what everybody is saying here, the likely consequences of declaring a state of emergency, especially in a state where the state is drawn across factional lines, each party taking a very strong position, those in support of the governor and those in support of the minister of the FCT. And if you take a decision that seems, to my mind, that favors one of the parties, you may not have come in as an unbiased intermediary.
Well, Senior Advocate, very interesting points raised there, but these are very, very interesting moments, really, for Nigeria and for Rivers State. We have to thank you so much for your intervention. We've been speaking with Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Sam Kagbo, joining us from the nation's capital, Abuja. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
So what does Rivers State look like this morning after that declaration of a state of emergency by President Bola Tinubu yesterday at about 7 p.m.? Well, it's a few minutes after 7 a.m. this morning, and let's show you what the streets of Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, looks like this morning. We have live visuals coming in just to show you the mood of the city. Well, it's still calm, like a normal Wednesday morning. This, by the way, is Port Harcourt, the state capital. It's still calm. You could see the vehicles just moving as though everything is fine. And we hope that it remains the same. But Jeffrey Bukola, looking at this image, I don't know, is it the calm before the storm or the calm that has been restored or that would be restored, or sorry, that will be sustained, that's the word?
Well, this looks to me more like uneasy calm in Rivers State, and a situation where the people are just internalizing the turn of events in the last 12 hours of course, with recourse as well to the turn of events in the last 2 years in Rivers State following the intractable political crisis. And of course, they're reflecting on their choices in the coming days and what it would look like, what Rivers State would look like, following this as declaration of state of emergency and the governance of an administrator who has now been appointed to oversee the state. What would the state look like under Vice Admiral Ibok Ete-Bass?
Yeah.
I believe those are the musings, possibly, of Rivers residents this morning.
So I don't know where this is exactly in Port Harcourt, but this is the capital city. When the heat is, when things happen, city centers are actually perhaps the very last places you get that pulse. I'm sure the people are trying to process what is really going on, because I don't think a lot of people saw that emergency declaration coming. But some of us who have our ears down already know that some things are going to happen this week, but to what extent is a different kettle of fish. So I'm sure a couple of other places are as calm as this, but there are other places. But the right word you use, Bukola, is that uneasy calm. People are not sure what to make it. But for a lot of people, their attention will also be at the National Assembly, perhaps, for the ratification or whatever word is used to give force to what the president has said. I was looking at what 2/3 majority means in the House of Reps. That should be like 240. House of National Senate should be like 72 or so. Whether they would follow through with the president's decision or defy it is up to them. But I guess this idea was to just, before this gets beyond the extraordinary, let's control this because it's a volatile environment. So we hope at the end of the day that sanity will return and the political gladiators themselves will have a reason and a time to reflect for the interest of the people. The interest of the people is the most primary interest at the end of the day. As long as that is sacrificed, then nobody wins. Guys?
Indeed, Jeffrey. We'll take a quick break now, and when we return, we'll not just bring you live images from the streets of Rivers, we'll be delving deeper into the state of emergency situation. Stay with us.
Welcome back. So Rivers State is very much on our minds this morning, as it is on the political front burner. And we're trying to understand the legal implications of the actions of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as far as his intentions are concerned, which is ultimately to restore peace. As he has said, he cannot continue to watch as events unfold in Rivers State, particularly with a threat, a seeming threat to national assets. And joining us to understand the legal implications of the president's action this morning is Barrister G.T. Ogunye, legal practitioner who joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Mr. Ogunye, good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
In fact, that's what Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Sam Karbu, has reacted to, for starters, this morning on the show. And he's talked about discretion, which is what I want you to speak to. With effect to Section 305, how much discretion has the President exercised with respect to that particular section of the Constitution, particularly as it has to do with the suspension of the governor and the State Assembly?
Discretionary power in a constitutional democracy with a written constitution is not given so much a pride of place, because constitutional provisions are written, they are known, they can be interpreted, but except the Constitution allows that discretion to be exercised, the authority vested with that power may not be able to exercise that discretion. But I understand that the discretion that Sam Kagwe SAN must have been talking about is a preliminary decision made by the president, and always made by the president, on matters like this, whether we've reached the point for a declaration of a state of emergency or a proclamation of a state of emergency. And when you look at that, you agree with me that this is a matter of facts. The facts you are relying on to say that we've not reached that stage of a proclamation of a state of emergency may be the same facts the president had relied on to reach a different conclusion. And when matters are like this, partisans are not helpful. There are people who say, oh, we've not reached that point. There are people who say that we've reached that point. And for me, once a power is given to be exercised, and there are checks and balances in the exercise of that power can be exercised. For example, if after the proclamation of the state of emergency and gazetting of that proclamation, the president is not able to muster a two-thirds majority vote in the National Assembly in support of that proclamation fails. But usually, issue of emergency, political emergency, are matters of security. I mean, we're not talking about a landslide, we're not talking about sea surge here, we're not talking about that, or medical emergency, okay? So we're talking about a political emergency. This is usually a matter of security, and usually parliamentarians tend to defer to the executive when it comes to the issue of security. But they will come and say that, yes, we are in the executive. We've had a National Security and Defense Council meeting. We've received reports. Pipelines are being blown up. There are threats to that effect. River State is so important to Nigeria in terms of revenue generation and the location of the IOCs, etc., etc. So we've reached that point. And because there are also political consideration across the aisle, across the entire divide, when you talked about the issue of revenue, you could see, the recent tax reforms, the hit it generated, where some people say, no, we won't get any money. So if some states within Nigeria, not in that region, have senators who could see this from an economic point of view, for example, that and that alone may sway them one way or the other. This crisis is coming. We've reached 2,000 or 2 million barrels. Now, what's going to happen to our revenue, and so on and so on. So, different considerations, but essentially, it is a matter for the president to decide whether we've reached that point. And if I were to be very clear, I would say that given how intractable you say that in your preface, that crisis had been, and how unreasonable on both sides the political actors had been, that decision to reach for the state of emergency was perhaps necessary. I would have wished for the president to go back to that presidential intervention at that time, to call the two sides. The Supreme Court has ruled. So what do you gain by this? You are from the same political party. I'm even a medicine interloper, meaning the president, because an APC president is the president of Nigeria now. So why can't you work together So wait for 2027 for the next election if you feel so strongly that you want to remove your governor. But this has implications for our democracy, for everything and all that. See whether they could bring them together before reaching out for this. I had advocated that publicly. And I had disagreed with those people who were coming on television that time and saying that the president had no local standing. Who is he to intervene? Who is he to forge a peace accord and all that? And people are just discussing as if they do not understand that in a country like ours, you need that kind of thing, because usually you're dealing with politicians who are engaged in perpetual brinkmanship. What will I gain? What will I get? So it's not essentially about the people. So if they can be at peace with themselves and not disturb the society, all the better. But I guess that a lot of people were, on both sides were saying, no, we're not good. Let's resile from that agreement.
Right.
Because if that agreement had held, I was here in the studio, and, the person who was interviewing me was asking, was there a provision in the Constitution for representation of the budget? Is that not too oppressive? I said, what do you mean? In the United States of America, Barack Obama openly, the global audience was watching, was sworn on the oath by Rehnquist, the CJ of the United States, the Chief Justice of the United States. And some lines were missed in administration of the oath. The following morning, Rehnquist came to the White House to re-administer the oath. So there's nothing that is cast
in stone.
In stone. If that was necessary at that time, which was the same conclusion the Supreme Court reached, why didn't you reach for that, and why the grandstanding?
Mr. Ogunye, as of this morning, is Governor Fubara, his deputy, and members of the State Assembly, are they suspended as of right now?
They are.
The National Assembly has not ratified it.
By the force of the proclamation. We can have an argument as to whether that suspension will only take effect after the ratification by the National Assembly.
Is it an argument or what the Constitution says?
After the ratification by the National Assembly. But what has happened historically in Nigeria? In 1962, we had a constitution, independence constitution. What has happened historically in Nigeria during the Western Regional Crisis? In 2004, 2003, 2004, we had a constitution. The Plateau president, the Ekiti president. We have constitution now, right? What usually is happening is that once that proclamation is gazetted, in anticipation and expectation that there will be an eventual declaration, things start to happen. Okay? And so, even the political actors or gladiators themselves will willingly see themselves as having been suspended.
But 3052, Mr. Ogunye, Section 3052 says the president shall immediately after the publication, which he did yesterday, transmit the copies of the official gazette. And the president said that it's been gazetted, right? He said transmit the copies containing the proclamation, including the details of the emergency, to the president of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, each of whom shall forthwith convene or arrange for a meeting for the House of Reps or the Senate, as the case may be, to consider the situation and decide whether or not to pass a resolution approving the proclamation, Mr. Ogunye.
Exactly.
So they need to approve this.
Exactly. I'm familiar with the provisions. I should be familiar with the provisions.
Certainly.
I'm saying that in terms of procedure, there's a proclamation. Indeed, the Constitution is so worded that that proclamation is not regarded as a full-fledged declaration of a state of emergency until and unless there is an approval of affirmation. So there's a proclamation gazetted, transmitted to the National Assembly, and then there will be a vote on it. If the vote rejects that proclamation, what happens? The proclamation and all that is associated with it in terms of the steps the president as dictator should be taking will collapse, okay? In which case, the governor and the House of Assembly will say they are still intact. They've not been removed, okay? But if it is then affirmed or approved it continues to take effect. I'm saying that historically in Nigeria, once that proclamation is made, everybody, sit back and accept that, oh, this is what has happened, because it's a delicate subject. As a matter of fact, it is debatable whether some of the things that the president has said, are sustainable, because after that, the National Assembly will set the terms. If you read the provisions further down, it will tell you that they will set the template, the terms.
The details.
They will usually pass an emergency powers, act or something, not just a resolution, to prescribe how the emergency powers will be exercised during that period. Okay? And if the 6-month period is over, they are also the person to extend it, agree with an extension, at that point. So it is essentially a duty to be performed between the executive branch of government and the legislative branch of government.
So let's start. I want you to resolve two things. So if they approve it, this is a shorter question. Is it sacrosanct? Must it be 6 months, given, I saw the last provision of that 305, that they can come in at any time, I don't know. So you may be giving us a legal interpretation, whether 6 months is sacrosanct. It must be 6 months. That's on one question.
Yeah.
On the other one is, I also want you to speak to the issue of suspending a governor in an emergency situation, which people have argued there is not governor, deputy, House of Assembly members, elected officials, that's the best way to put it, in an emergency situation, because that's the subject of debate right now. So 2 questions.
So the first question is if they agree. Is that the question?
Yeah. Well, if they agree for this to hold, the proclamation to come into effect as a formal declaration of emergency, state of emergency, whether it can be muted in 3 months or it must go the long stretch of 6 months. That's the question.
And the other part about the suspension.
Yes.
But the situation that warranted the declaration of a state of emergency could indeed improve so fantastically that that period may be revisited. And then the executive can then go back to the National Assembly and say, sorry, the situation has improved. We no longer need a state of emergency. So it's not sacrosanct that it must be 6 months. No. It's just that the Constitution has prescribed a time frame, a period, for which the emergency to last. It mustn't extend without a renewal, and all that, so that we don't have a full-blown dictatorship. The second question has been a question that has not been resolved, even by the Supreme Court. And here I reference the case of the Plateau State government and the House of Assembly of Plateau State, whereas the Attorney General of the Federation. It's reported in 2006, 3 Nigerian Weekly Law report, part 967, at page 346, I think. And that case was a case in which the Plateau State government, quote and unquote, after the declaration of a state of emergency and the assumption of office by Brigadier General, now late MC, Chris Ali, was made the
sole
administrator. And so that action was instituted at the Supreme Court. And a preliminary point was taken in that case, whether, as at the time of institution of that action, those who call themselves the Plateau State government had the virus, had the right, had the local standing to approach the Supreme Court, having been removed by suspension. And the Supreme Court treated the preliminary point. Some people, legal historians and lawyers have said that the Supreme Court dodged its responsibility on that occasion, because the issue was whether indeed in the substantive matter.
So that means it was instituted after the emergency was declared.
And the substantive issue in that matter was whether, the declaration of state of emergency connotes or denotes or, implicates that democratic structure must be demolished. And the Supreme Court then said, look, you are no longer in office. The only person that could authorize this is the sole administrator. Meaning that, so if today, Governor Fubara and the legislature in Rivers State were to approach a court in the name of Rivers State, they will tell them, sorry, based on stare decisis and precedent. So that issue has not been resolved. Now you see lawyers coming to say that, oh, it's constitutional, it's not constitutional. That's enlightened opinion.
Well, the NBA disagrees totally.
That the NBA can disagree totally.
So is the NBA wrong?
That's the enlightened opinion of NBA. I'm telling you that the court, the Supreme Court of Nigeria, has not pronounced, and historically in Nigeria, incidentally, right from 1962, when we had the cases that, came after Adegbenro and Akintola, 1963 Privy Council, William Samajagodumi, and so on and so forth, the courts have always validated that kind of suspension. In Western region, Akintola was suspended. Majakodumi was a sole administrator, which is something I will allude to, and in under Obasanjo in Plateau State, Chris Ali, and then Brigadier General Oluri. Incidentally, both of them are late now. But finally, if I may, or not finally, I don't know.
We have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I'm not very pleased with the idea, because we talk about democratization and demilitarization. It is not, the norm that when you are declaring a state of emergency and you want to appoint a sole administrator, you should bring a military man or a military retiree. Obasanjo did that, Oluri, and they were retired at the time. So, but I've just shared with us here that in Western region, a civilian government of Balewa made a civilian Majakodumi, the administrator of Western region. So, if we must take demilitarization seriously, I don't know the security reports at the disposal of the president to warrant that, blowing off of pipes, creeks, and all that. So go and bring a naval admiral or whatever, a naval officer, retired officer. But I would have wished that, in the spirit of continuous civilianization of a country that, be under military dictatorship,
and that's a compelling aspect of the conversation. And I'm just wondering if it is, antecedent that gives legitimacy to declarations of state of emergency and debatable, suspension of democratically elected leaders. But clearly, it's an ongoing conversation.
No, but in 2013, President Jonathan declared state of emergency in those 5 states, and yet no democratic structures were removed in the face of war.
All right.
So it depends on the
worst scenario.
In the worst scenario, and yet that didn't happen.
All right. Mr. Ogunye, thank you so much. We've been talking with Mr. G.T. Ogunye, legal practitioner who has joined us here in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, okay.
All right. We'll continue the conversation as we should. We'll also be looking at the moral and political implications of the declaration of a state of emergency in
Welcome back. Let's leave the legalese and talk about the politics, in Bukola's words, the moral angle as well to this the proclamation by the president on a state of emergency in Rivers State, given the protracted political impasse. We're being joined in the program by former member of the House of Representatives, Mr. Agbona Onwuke. He joins us via Zoom from Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, as well as Engineer Yabagi Sani, is the national chairman of Action Democratic Party. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank
you for inviting me too.
All right, Ms. Anwoke, I know that there are so many facts available to a lot of people, and there's been multiplicity of interpretation as to laws and all whatnot. But let's talk about the politics. It is the politics that brought everyone here. What's your immediate reaction to what is playing out in Rivers State vis-a-vis the president's decision to declare a state of emergency and appoint a sole administrator?
Let me say clearly that the people of Rivers State are in shock following the pronouncement of Mr. President, and who many months ago, issued an 8-point agenda for peace, and who also watched that agenda destroyed by those the agenda was supposed to protect. Now, insofar as we are concerned, we know that there been an attempt to play up the incident in Rivers State to create the impression that the assembly is at war with the governor. But what is clear here is that this has been a war of resources between the governor and the former governor of Rivers State, who is currently the minister of the FCT. Now, this whole trouble began with an attempt by lawmakers who were loyal and who are still loyal to the minister, attempting to impeach the governor. That impeachment effort failed, but Rivers has never had peace. And I must say here that most Rivers people are shocked by the pronouncement of the president. And the pronouncement of the president suggests a one-sided view of all that has transpired in Rivers State. There have been calls across board that the president should rein in his minister. But the president has chosen to play the ostrich, refusing to listen to public opinion, not just in Rivers State, but across the country. And it looks to us here in Rivers that this action was premeditated. It was either they were going to impeach Governor Fubara, or they were going to declare a state of emergency. And all this, the horrid declaration of a state of emergency, when actually there has been no threat to the peace in Rivers State, is shocking. But the president anchored his argument on Section 305, his decision to suspend all democratic structures for 6 months. And of course, everybody knows there are processes through which declaration of a state of emergency can be achieved. But in this instance, I can say that most Rivers people are still trying to wrap their heads around the reason why the president did what he did. But it's obvious that as a father of the nation, he had heavily supported a few against a majority, and it's a sad day for Rivers State.
Mr. Sani, let me take you to Mr. Yabagi Sani. Mr. Yabagi Sani, from an insider in, what do you see has played out here? He said that is saying that the president is biased in his disposition, despite his citing of the Constitution as a premise for his action, given what has played out in Rivers State for the past 2 years. So I want you to speak to this statement or the broadcast of the president, what you felt when you heard it, and what is playing out.
Well, thank you very much. I believe that Mr. President is the #1 chief security officer of the country. He has the constitutional rights to ensure that this country is governed in a peaceful manner, and to ensure that no section of the country is governed differently from what is stated in the Constitution. What has happened to me really portrays the president in a very, very bad light. He didn't act presidential, if you look at that speech, because a president is supposed to act in the interest of all parties. Whenever a president is drawn into such issues that are between two parties that everybody in the world is aware that what is happening in Rivers State is between Governor Fubara and the Man Friday of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that is Chief Wike, Johnson, who was the governor of Rivers State before, now Minister of Federal Capital. So, Mr. President, his speech, of course, relied, heavily on the Constitution, but he failed to exhaust all the provisions of the Constitution, which was to guarantee the democracy that we have, which he says we fought for, and we should also do everything possible to maintain. He didn't, live up to his expectation, because that Constitution that he referred to made provisions for when you have a situation where the House of Assembly is incapacitated, the National Assembly is given the right to take over the functions of the State House of Assembly. And in this particular case, what we are seeing played out is that even when Governor Fubara has agreed, to follow the judgment of the Supreme Court and was ready to present his budget to the House of Assembly, they locked him out and did not allow him to come to the House to make presentation of his budget. So, which means it is not Fubara that is creating the crisis that Mr. President was referring to. It is just Onwike. And I don't know how Mr. President will now, in his speech, if you say I should talk about the speech, he called Fubara as a despotic leader. I don't know who is despotic in this manner now, in this circumstance, because Mr. President he took just one position, and that is to rig 2027 election even before the time, meaning that they want to make sure that the opposition is so, crippled, in all, not only River State. Look at what is happening in Kano State, playing the traditional rulers against each other in order to cripple the opposition wherever the opposition is in power. I don't think this is good for democracy. I don't think Mr. President is fair to us, particularly myself. When I was the chairman of IPAC, I remember I stood up to ensure that we did not have this democracy to be truncated when the counting was going on, and some opposition leaders came out and said they should stop the counting of the election. I said, no, we should continue, because we thought that the man that will inherit that action was a Democrat that will come and save and promote democracy in this country. But today what is happening is a different thing. I mean, we understand when President Obasanjo, declared, the state of emergency in where I am today, Jos, Plateau State, in 2004, it was because there was a case of conflagration of what was happening in Jos, meaning that the Kano State, there was a reprisal of killing of Christians, which was what happened in this. So President Obasanjo was right to, at that point in time, intervene to save the nation. But in this particular case, we have only a case that affects only one state, and you have provisions in the Constitution that will allow democratic structures in that state to continue. If you want to declare state of emergency, it's fine, but you can declare state of emergency to take care of the vandalization of the pipelines, which of course is inimical to the economy of this country. Yeah. Today, I understand we are losing like $35.5 million, per day, which is about $5 billion per day, because of the vandalization.
Indeed,
yes,
Mr. Yabagi,
you can declare, but
yeah,
not the democratic structures.
Yes, you're hovering around the edges of, the areas that I want to explore in my next line of questioning. And I'm coming to you, Mr. Nwuke, on this one. It's a day to go down memory lane, particularly with recourse to declarations of state of emergencies in the past. And, the print media is reminding us about, the reaction of the current Mr. President as Lagos State Governor, to the declaration of a state of emergency in Plateau State at the time by former President Olusegun Obasanjo. And he says, there's a newspaper clipping here, Tinubu, removal of Dariye is illegal. So, and today he is President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I wonder if, this decision has been carried out with a sense of, history, with recourse to what has happened in the past. Besides that, this, is also coming some hours after the, vandalism of pipeline, the TMP pipeline in River State. Some would ask, pipelines have been vandalized in the very recent times in River State. What is different about this one? Mr. Nwuke, what are your thoughts on these two issues relating to the actions of the president in River State?
I believe that history is supposed to give us an insight, not just to what has happened in the past, but what is happening in the present, so we can have a better future. And of course, you can see that it will not be the first time in Nigeria that a state of emergency has been declared. the state of emergencies should be declared for good reason. Now, let us start with the last side of your question. A pipeline exploded, and the expectation of reasonable people will be that the system will investigate the reason for the explosion. And that did not happen. Already, because there is a slanted view, maybe in the presidency, about the good intentions of Governor Fubara, who opted to obey the Supreme Court, who all throughout his tenure continued to ask for calm among the Rivers people, continued to pray for peace, to work for peace. The president acted in a manner that most Nigerians think, of course, to think was very unpresidential. And some think it's even illegal because there are processes. But let's go to the past. Of course, just the last speaker just explained why Obasanjo acted as in just, why he declared a state of emergency, and he agrees it was for a good cause. And now we know too that in the past, in the Old West, where attempts were made to declare a state of emergency for the wrong reasons, we know what happened and what history teaches us. It led to widespread unrest and probably laid the foundation for the end of that republic. Now, I believe that what we should be doing and what we should be saying is our best to get the president, because he relied on Section 305, which gives him absolutely the right to declare a state of emergency. But the issue is whether or not the president followed due processes as laid out by the Constitution. Section 11 allows the National Assembly to make laws in states where situations like this exist. Similarly, the governor of a state ought to be part of the process of the declaration of a state of emergency. It is only when the governor is not part of, or has refused or failed to inform, invite maybe the federal government or the president, as the case may be, to declare a state of emergency, that the president can go ahead and declare a state of emergency. But looking at the Constitution and the framing of the Constitution, it is doubtful that the framers of our Constitution envisaged a situation where democratic structures will be demolished by a sitting president. In this instance, the governor has been asked to stay aside for 6 months. Even the legislature,
Mr. Wuke,
the pro-Winke legislature has been asked to stay aside for 6 months. And the question is, why is the president silent when it comes to Nyesom Wike? Why is he not saying anything?
Well, Mr. Wuke, looking through that, the provisions.
Why is the president not doing anything?
Right, pardon me, looking through the provisions of the Constitution, as you said, Section 305, it only makes reference to elected officials. In this case, the president, the governor, even the National Assembly, the State Assembly. There is no mention of any other person. So within the context of this, and also what the president said yesterday, remember, he mentioned the demolition of the State Assembly by the governor. In fact, he referred to the words of the Supreme Court that a government cannot exist without one of the arms. And the governor, by that demolition, had collapsed the legislature. And as it is, there is no government in Rivers State. Those were the words which the president then quoted, right? And let me go to Mr. Sani, Ayabagi Sani, on this. I know both of you have made that point about the president not mentioning Mr. Nyesom Wike, but these issues he mentioned about the demolition, the statement of the Supreme Court, and how it has grave consequences, not forgetting the security reports he had gotten as well. Well-intentioned, wrong intervention, perhaps you seem to be saying, but what more option was available, really? If the president had intervened, the courts had intervened, you know, the elders in court had intervened as well. So, Mr. Sani, what option was left, really?
You know, if Governor Fubara, collapsed the structure of the state, to act as a despot, like he says, then the role of the president as the father of land of the land, is to call Fubara and find political solution. It's not a political solution. This is a solution that is partisan. This is a solution that is anti-democratic. This is a solution that just, looking for, giving a dog a bad name to hang it.
To put it in context, Mr. Sani, are you saying after the president had called the governor originally to that meeting where there was a resolution, he should have called the governor again to another meeting? Is that what you're saying?
The president should not be tired of calling the governor. He could call the governor every day if it amounts to that, for him to maintain peace in Nigeria. He's always in the meeting with Yeson Wike, who he knows is one of the people that is a party to this crisis. In fact, if not the only issue in this matter, and why he has refused to deal with the issue of Wike. And today, you are saying that the Federal Executive Council is going to administer, River State, where Yeson Wike is an active participant. Is that not also anti-democratic? Is that not unfair? So it's not good for it. Doesn't portray Mr. President, in a good light. That's the point we are trying to make. And we expected him as a Democrat to act differently. One would have expected Buhari to act like this, or President Obasanjo to act like this because of their background as a military, president. But here you are with a Democrat acting, in a manner that will bring democracy itself to its knees. So this is the point we are making. Nobody's against Mr. President, but he's not acting presidential. That's what people have said. He has taken sides. In his speech, he didn't mention Yeson Wike once. He just said parties. This is not how presidents, act.
All right. I think the points are well noted. It's an ongoing conversation, gentlemen. It's just barely less than 24 hours to that proclamation. The National Assembly perhaps will sit today to give force to it or otherwise. But we must thank you both, Honorable Ogbonna Onwuke, former member of the House of Representatives, as well as Engineer Yabagi Sani, National Chairman of the Action Democratic Party. Thank you so much for your intervention. Thank you, sirs.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, we will take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll switch gears away from the brouhaha in Rivers State, and we'll get to what is playing out at the national level, especially that has to do with young people and youth. The Minister of Youth Development will be joining us in just a moment. Stay with us.
President Bola Tinubu has said most of the things he does them for Nigerian youth. But are the Nigerian youth feeling the impact? We're joined on the program, as you've seen, by the Minister of Youth Development, Mr. Ayodele Olawande. He is live for us virtually this morning. Good morning, Minister. You're welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, sir.
Naturally, a lot of people will be viewing all of the president's decision, particularly the young Nigerians, be viewing it, how does this affect me? How does this improve my life? True to what the president has said otherwise. And naturally, the state of emergency declaration in Rivers State will also be viewed from that angle, because what you find is right in the middle of political disputes, you have young people either as foot soldiers, spearheading, all of the active matters in those issues. I don't know if you've had conversations with youths in Rivers State, but I think it's important to get your intervention, particularly for the youths, who sadly most times are used as fuel for fires of political wars. Have you spoken with them? What is your word for the youths in Rivers State particularly?
I think me don't really want to talk about the issues of Rivers State, but when you raise it about the youth, everybody knows, and all of us, including you, know that the 70% of the population of this country is are youth, and if any decisions are to be taken, is for the future of this country. It's for the future. And what's the future? Is we, the young people, not even the old. And I think the major thing is that everybody will come up with his own view, ideas, and everything in law, in others. I think the president probably looks into the security of, because I spoke with some of them, like you said, we spoke with some, both, I think the same party, but anyway, both parties and everything, we looked at it and said, okay, probably the extensions, the vandalizations, and we all know that the economy of this country, when the president took power, is just like you are getting a water from a dry well, which the economy started stabilizing, looking into it, putting it together so that we can have an enable environment to thrive, and looking away from poise and all that. But still, the economy is still based on that. I think majority of it is still based on that. And if vandalizations started happening now and nothing is being done about it, killings and all sorts of insecurity, you know, the threat of Niger Delta, all those things and all that. Probably maybe that's a decision. No, that's also not my part, but I think the insecurity part of it, the security part of it and all that should be the reason. But for me, I don't really want to dive into that.
Well, glad you spoke with some of the youths, and I hope they were able to see reason with you. But let's talk about the work you're doing. You were Minister of State. Oh, they did. That's great. You were Minister of State, then now Minister. For a lot of people, they see you as a newcomer. Some will say, well, you've been mobilizing all the while and doing a lot of groundwork until you became the Minister of State. But something the president did, which was quite interesting, is to announce the National Youth Conference to take place. And I understand that a lot of work is ongoing. But while work is ongoing, let's try to link that work to the realities of Nigerian youth. And one of the pulse-feeling moments recently was that National Youth Corps who did a video, very emotional, got very emotional, and, you know, just described how life is for her and lots of Nigerians, really. In fact, at some point, she said that she believes this president has been terrible. I don't know if you've had the chance to sit down and maybe internalize some of the points she made about the cost of living and all of that. What do you have to say to the statement, particularly about her describing the president as being bad at his job? Terrible, she said.
Look, let me just also say this. I don't want to, again, somehow, I don't see it as something we should be dragging, or probably opposition party, whatever, everybody come up and said, everybody have a right for freedom of speech. We're in the country, we're in a democracy, you can say what you like, and it's clear that any country that is in the position where we are now, where you need to reshape, restructure, look at everything. And let me say this clearly, I don't blame any young people that are saying this. I'm also a young man. I'm a very young man. I'm in my 30s. And I can say it for some of us that have go beyond the age of 30, for 40 years, 40 good years. It's clear that hardly will you see a young man in this country, maybe outside 40, those that said this thing happens to them in school, this thing happens to them in when they were in Ife, when they were in this, immediately they were out of school, they gave them a job, they did this, they did that. What for 40 good years? No youth in this country, and I'm talking about the past administrations, but we have decided not to talk about it, but there's no how we're not going to mention it. For 40 good years, no youth. I've been able to see the government. I've been able to touch the government. I've been able to feel the government in any way. Not in any way, including myself, those days and all that. And you want to tell me that a man will just come and say that, see, this is what is happening, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. You will see some people that have said, no, we have had it before. We've had so many stories. We've had so many stories. I'm in the political space whereby people will come and tell you who wants to, even National Assembly, a candidate of that is contesting for National Assembly, probably Rep or Senate, we will come to you and come and tell you that I want to build road, I want to build a hospital, I want to, you know, a lot of stories have been said. And to come out and see a government that said, okay, this is what we want to do, this is it.
Honorable Minister,
A lot of people will say a lot of things. A lot of people will tell a lot of stories. A lot of people will say, no, it cannot be possible.
Well, Honorable Minister, let's not lose sight of the conversation.
What we are going through now, that will... A question has been asked. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm just trying to give the background of this.
Yeah, beyond the ability of Nigerian youth.
And you said?
Okay, land on that thought.
There is nowhere a country that's going through what we have went through for the past and we just overnight change. It's a process, and that's the process we're going through. That is the reason why we're where we are. I think probably before we have been living what they call a life that's been packed, but we are living a real life, and we are saying that, okay, see, and that is what the president is doing. And what the president is doing, and what you talk about the decision he's making, is to create an enable environment for us to thrive. It may be hard now, but very soon, because everything is getting to down now, and we can see that a lot of people will see how the economy is being and how investors and everybody is coming to the country, and how you can do a lot of...
Honorable Minister, pardon me, let me come in here. Beyond the ability of the Nigerian youth to be able to touch the government, in your own words, under this administration, the question is, how democratized is the process? And let's not lose sight of the conversation. What's more important is the treatment of the complaints laid by this youth copper, Rai, that's her name, I believe, and the substance of the matter, which is...
I said I don't want to discuss the youth coppers matter.
The suggestion by an aide of the administration that the capital punishment, which is the ultimate, to be meted on her, which is expulsion. But what are the complaints that she has laid, which is affecting the generality of the Nigerian youth? But let's make progress and talk about the National Youth Confab that is being convoked by the administration under your watch. But if we looked at the trajectory of the pattern of response to government policies of the current crop of Nigerian youth, talking about the National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, some would say that they have been compromised. If we looked at the end bad governance protests, there was no consensus of NANS. A bulk of them were supporting the government, protesting against protest, while the others, very few of them, were against the protest. If you also looked at what has been happening in recent times, some section of NANS were supporting the Senate president following the sexual harassment allegations laid against the Senate president. So my question is, are we going to see the same divisiveness coloring the representation of Nigerian youths following the convocation of this National Youth Confab? And does this concern you, Honorable Minister?
Thank you. Thank you very much. One of those things that I've said, and I will continue to say about this confab, is that, see, I'm a young man. Again, I will continue saying that. And if we don't do it right now, if I don't take the bullet, if I don't stand on my feet, if I don't see myself as a comrade, which we are to be, and we have stand to be before, then I don't think we have, I don't think we are getting it right, and we have a long way to go. I've said it about confab and probably youth organizations. See, it is the youth demography that is difficult and very difficult to stand or to do a lot of things with. If old people are doing confab, you will see them. You know the people in your areas. You know but when it comes to youth, we have millions of youth organizations. We have millions of, even in political parties, not to talk of the general view of it. But I'm saying that this confab wants to do everything possible that is not going to be political, that is not going to be sectional. Everybody I want to do what has never been done before by taking the confab to the grassroots. And when you talk about the end bad governance, it's one of those things about the end bad governance that bring up this. And when we are trying to do a dialogue, and because we have a listing president, we approach him, we talk to him, and he said, yes, you can. Let's see how we can even expand it and see how everybody can be carried along. So there's not going to be a section. And like my brother said the other time, when I was Minister of State, I've went to over 24 states, and I discovered that what is happening in different states, what they need in different states, and what is happening in different states are varies. What is happening there is different from what is happening in Borno. I've been to Chibok, I've been to Borno, And I see that what is even happening in Shibo is different from what is happening in the capital city, Maiduguri. What is happening in Edo is different from what is happening in Ondo, where I came from. What is happening in Ondo is different from what is happening in Lagos. The youths, these things are different. Their priorities are different. And I said, see, let's have a roundtable talk. Let's go back to those people that are the young people. Let us give them the government. And with what I said and you've quoted, let them feel the government for once. Let them see the government and let them touch the government. Let us have a conversation around this. It is not about bringing somebody from Harvard, from whatever, to come to Abuja to come and sit down for 30 days. No. The first 1 week, we should be at the grassroots. Let's engage them. Let's even know what is happening in Ilaje that is different from what is happening in Akure, or what is happening in the South that is different from what is happening in the Southeast. Let us put this together. Let us harmonize it. Let us see how we can come on the round table and have an NCC that will go in federal, National Assembly, federal, which I'm there in FEC, National Assembly and the judiciary, to put this together and said, okay, the president should implement this.
All right,
the National Assembly
just a moment,
this,
because of
and the
time.
judiciary should implement this. And that's the kind of confab I'm looking forward to. And that is why when we were doing the composition of the committee, it is based on institution, not based on individual.
All right, Honorable Minister, just a moment. If I may come in, just two quick questions. I'll begin to wind down. So you said it's all inclusive. I'm going to ask you the same question we asked one of the aides of the president. So do we have members of the Labour Party in the committee? Do we have PDP members in that committee? I mean, these are the immediate opposition. Do we have them in that committee?
Let me answer the question.
Just hold on because of time. So let me ask the two questions. Sorry, my apologies. So do we have them in the committee? Second, this is not the first time confabs are being held. So there's nothing special about confab. So if you want to tell us two things you want to get out of this confab, not three, not five, just two.
All right, thank you very much. I watched the interview. I think that's Risola Abiola's SAPC leadership. Labour, I just made it straight here that it's not about political parties. And they were involved. When you look at the composition is representative of all the national leaders of the political parties, representative of probably Labours and everybody. They have a forum, and there's a forum of national youth leaders. They have to present two people from their national forum, so that there will be a representative in the committee. So it's not going to be APC, no. There may not be APC there. There may not be PDP. It's strictly out of political parties. But to have a representative to talk about them, to bring them, and majority of them will be in the subcommittees. So it's not about, I don't want us to really base it on Labour Party, obedience. We're all Nigerians. We are Nigerian youth. I'm so much focused because everything that I'm doing now lies on my future. So I'm so much focused on putting everything together in a way that any political party is not going to have influence on this. And it's going to be strictly constitutional for the people's first, because immediately I took this position, the first thing that came to my head is that everything I'm going to do is...
all right, Minister, I think you've exhausted that point because of time. Just a moment. So two things you want to get out, two things, because of time. Two things you want to achieve with the conference, sir.
The two things I want to achieve in this conference is to see the way to support the young people, to see the way to empower the young people and to protect the young people. I'll give you three.
Well, we'll definitely be keeping tabs with all of that as soon as the dates are out and the modalities. Definitely. But we have to thank you so much, Honorable Minister. We understand that you are a bit under the weather, but you had to do this interview as well. We've been speaking with the Minister of Youth Development, Ayodele Olawande. Thank you very much, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you, sir.
Well, that's something for the youth, but we're not done just yet. There is so much more for you right here on the show. We're still talking about food. There's Innovate Her, and Master Lee joins us on this show, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
What an intense 45 minutes, but there's more to come. And this time around, we're moving straight into, the women's space, women in tech. And joining us on this particular segment is Oreoluwa Lesi. She's the Executive Director, Women's Technology Empowerment Center, WTech. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's talk about what seems to be the obvious gap and the emergence of many more women to support the younger girls in tech. Talk to us about your exploits in that space and what are your findings as well?
All right, so I can talk about what I do. So my name is Oreoluwa Lesi, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Women's Technology Empowerment Center. So we're an organization based here in Lagos, but working across Nigeria and indeed Africa. And we're helping to raise more girls and young women. We want them to be technology creators. We want them to be leaders and entrepreneurs in the STEM space.
And there's a very, vast space of opportunity as far as tech is concerned.
Yes.
But there's so many, places, where young girls do not even have that awareness, even in Lagos and particularly in the north. But the effort, is very few and far between of, contributions of women like you to try to raise more young girls to be participants in tech. How can, we create entrepreneurs for more girls to be empowered in tech, not just, in the center of excellence and in the commercial capital, but in those communities?
All right, so we have definitely come a long way. When WTech started, we started in 2008, so we've been doing this work for 17 years. When we started, there was very little awareness about the gender gap in technology. Thankfully, there is a lot more awareness now that there's a gap, that women are underrepresented in this space, and that we need to get more women, and why it's important, that it's not just a nice to have, but it's actually it's good for the bottom line. Having more girls and women in technology and in STEM across, helps to bring diversity of thoughts and perspectives. So WTech is not alone. There are more organizations. So in the time that we've been working, there are more organizations, that are working in this space. And we all work, in different parts of the country. WTech is based in Lagos, but then we work across the country. I think one of our interesting projects, has been the Makerspace projects, and that's primarily been in northern Nigeria. So we worked in Abuja, in Bauchi, Nasarawa states, and also other states, Ondo State, Kwara State as well. I think that one thing that is important to do is that knowing that as an organization, our end goal is not just to go in and train girls, but we are training girls who become leaders in themselves, and they start to train other girls in their communities. And so that's one thing that is coming out of our programs. We're having our beneficiaries who are in different parts of the country, and they are now setting up their own projects and initiatives, and they're also training other girls in their community. And then we work in partnerships with other organizations. So we recently had a program in collaboration with IHS, Nigeria, and we had a one-day program to celebrate the International Day of Women and Girls in Science in Lagos, in Enugu State, and also in Kano. So we partner with other organizations, and so we're able to work with different pockets and groups of girls, and they are raising other girls and women who are now becoming ambassadors and leaders in science and technology.
And clearly this is not a sprint, it's more like a marathon.
Yes,
and you've been in this for, since 2008.
Yes.
That's almost 20 years now, and I think that's really brilliant. And as you were talking, I was just imagining a world where there's, more girls in tech. I think that's the world you envision as well. So we're on the same trajectory here. But speak to us about the opportunities in the tech space for girls, for women, or generally, right? Because clearly there's a dearth, and people want to be pointed in the right direction. I see a lot of people queuing behind, okay, let's all learn coding. Okay, no, let's learn data.
Yes.
They even learn things and realize, it's not even tech related, and they have to start again. So what are the opportunities, and what should be the process for girls and women?
All right. So I think it's important to realize that everything that we do intersects with technology. Whether you are a fashion designer, you are a lawyer, you are an entrepreneur, and of course you have the core technical roles. You could be an engineer, a computer scientist, a programmer, software developer, engineer. So you do have those roles. But then you have other roles that may not be tech, may not be a technical role, core tech, exactly, but then they're still needed in the technology space. And so, like I said, whatever you're doing, nowadays we're all using technology anyway. When we started, we wanted to raise girls who would work in core tech. But of course, along the way, we realized that, that may not be everybody's interest. But no matter what you do, you need to be able to navigate in this world. And this world is now an increasingly technology-focused world. So what we do is that we go to schools, and we also run programs outside of schools, exposing girls to the different aspects of technology. And we bring in mentors as well. So we bring in men and women, primarily women, who are working in technology, but also working in other spaces as well, who are using technology significantly in their work to speak about what they do, so that the girls can start to think and they can start to make connections between, oh, this amazing woman I see before me and myself. And then they start to make connections between their own strengths and their interests. Oh, I'm good in maths, I'm good in English, where could there be a space for me? So we also share, different career opportunities, and also the subjects in schools that, you need to study, if you are going to, you want to study that, in university. So we're making those connections, and then we're also making opportunities for internships as well, so that even in secondary school, the girls have the opportunity to do job shadowing.
Lovely.
Exactly.
I'm also very interested in the cost aspect, because you know how much data costs these days. You know how much a computer is. Yes. Well, a fairly good computer, you know how much it is. So if you put that together, and then you go back to the minimum wage of the parents, for example, you realize that they'll have to work for a certain number of years to be able to afford that in addition to the daily needs. So what is the thinking to ensure that we're not left behind in spite of the fact that, yes, these things are expensive because we, again, don't produce these things, right? So what is the thinking? How do you creatively maneuver that cost aspect?
All right, so when the girls come for our trainings, obviously we have, we have our training facility, and so we have computers, we have the internet. But one thing we found out when we would follow up with the girls after the program was that some of them were continuing on with their, learning, whether it was programming, web design they learned in the camp, but then some others, because like you said, they didn't have access to a computer at home or in school, they were not able to follow through with their learning. So we set up an after-school club. So we work in selected schools in Lagos State, Kwara State, Ondo State, schools that have computers, schools that have internet. And so the girls are able to delve into a one-year curriculum. So for a period of 1 year, every week we're there in their schools and we are working with them. Another project that we had was one where we partnered with public libraries across the country, because a lot of public libraries were equipped with computers and the internet, but a lot of people didn't know this. So there are public libraries there, over 72 public libraries across Nigeria. So chances are if you find one near you, you can have access to a computer and you can have access to the internet. And we encourage the girls to be creative as well. Find that auntie or uncle, who has, a system that you can use, or whether it's in school and helping out, with the ICT teachers. So we have some of our beneficiaries who are now like the assistant ICT teacher in their school, because based on what they've learned, they're able to go back to the school and really encourage the other girls, to also take an interest in technology.
Brilliant.
And you know what they say about when women take up a task, they bring their hearts to it. So beyond empowering young girls in tech, let's look at what impact their roles will be, in providing solutions to some of the common problems that we have in our national life. Say in about 10 years from now, when some of the seeds, that you have sown in encouraging women in tech will become fruits and trees.
Well, if we look at a lot of the technology that we're using right now, a lot of them were developed by, well, I shouldn't say a lot of them, but some of the major ones were developed by women. The first program in the world was written by a woman, Ada Lovelace.
GPS?
Yes, GPS, Wi-Fi, one of the earliest programming languages, COBOL, was developed by a woman. So we're all beneficiaries of products and innovations that women have made. And so we're seeing that, in our girls as well. They're coming up with creative apps, to solve problems, that they and maybe their friends or, people in their neighborhood or community have. So we're already seeing that. That's really amazing. And we're already seeing, we've worked with over 52,000 girls, women, boys and teachers as well, since we have been working. And close to 70% of our beneficiaries, stated that the program encouraged them to want to study a science, technology, engineering course. And we actually have about 36% who are actually studying a STEM course already. So we're already following them, we're following their trajectory. And many of them are coming back to the organization to give or going to different parts of the world. And we can see the amazing things that they're doing. They're setting up their own organizations, they're training others, they're going on to do PhDs.
And there's more to come in that space.
The future
more
is women.
Solutions from
women.
The future is female.
Yeah, that's
all right.
Thank you.
We must anchor at this point, and we're so proud of what you're doing, empowering young girls in tech across the country. Oluwa Leshi has been our guest. She's the Executive Director, Women's Technology Empowerment Center, WTech. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And from politics to, innovating women, we're going now to food security. There's so much more to come on your Perfect Morning Starter. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Food security. We're being joined in the program by Pauline Opara, Head Food Security and Livelihood at Action Against Hunger, ACF, joining us from our Abuja studios. Thank you so much, Ms. Opara, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Food is essential. Anything that affects food is considered existential. That's how critical food is. It's at a basic level of survival. So we're not get tired of talking about food. The inflation numbers are out. They've eased by a few percentage, I think 1 or so in terms of food inflation based on the rebased CPI. But when you look at what is playing out in Nigeria, what's your general and maybe, let me use the word, general assessment of how you think the Nigerian government, which has struggled many years now to be able to make food as available at affordable rate as possible to a lot of people. What in your strategic frontier do you propose can help tackle the issue of food security, which has been a challenge for a very long time?
Thank you so much for that question. To be able to understand the dynamics and multiple factors that have been contributing to food insecurity in the country and how to solve them, I think it is good for us to state the obvious facts, the details, and also the revelations from different assessments that has been conducted within the country. So currently, the just concluded March Cadre Harmonize, I'm sure you might know about the Cadre Harmonize, is early warning tool for food and nutrition insecurity across the country that has been facilitated for over 5 years by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. So according to the analysis that was just recently conducted in March, concluded in March, it states that currently, according to the analysis, currently we are having about 24 million people who are currently food and nutrition insecure in Nigeria. And as per the projection, we are going to have over 30 million people who would be in the same food and nutrition insecurity in the lean season, very critical lean season. And we also know that the lean season is going to come early this year. So we have among them over 60% of this population who are women, and also about 150,000 IDPs who will be food insecure in the country. These numbers are alarming, and it has been the case for over 15 years. So some of the key drivers of food insecurity in the country is, of course, one of the obvious first driver we know is about the general conflict and insecurity, especially in northern Nigeria. But this is across the country though. But also in northern Nigeria, we know that Borno State also have experienced impending conflict for over 15 years, and this has also contributed to food insecurity in the area. Also the northern region, the northwest region, Sokoto, Katsina and Zamfara are also facing severe food insecurity, with very high number as high as 6 million people to be food insecure. So aside the conflict, part of it is also the farmer health crisis. This has not allowed people, farming community, who we know are part of the rural community, to access their lands for farming. Also, even the herders are unable also to farm and rear their livestock for large-scale production. So this is one of the biggest challenge, alongside the climate change that we have been experiencing. I would not delve so deep into it. We have experienced it, and this is also causing a lot of challenge as regards to agriculture and providing sustainable solution to food and nutrition security in the country. Also, I would like to talk about, because we had a gender person who just recently talked about technology. I would also talk about the lack of involvement of youth and also women in agricultural activity. We have I think left that particular set of people in the nation development and in terms of agriculture, and this is one challenge, alongside the different infrastructure that has not been available for farmers and rural dwellers, information, early warning, the use of innovations and technology has actually limited food security and farmers to be able to get the right knowledge and innovation to be able to produce enough food for the growing population. So to also answer your question, now that we have known the different key drivers of food insecurity in Nigeria, it is important for us to first treat them differently.
It's a grim picture that you paint. Before you begin the second part of your answer, it's a grim picture that you have painted, but based also on other factors that have been spoken about at the beginning of the year. I'm talking about the weather prediction for 2025 as announced by the Minister of Aviation some weeks back, that there will be delayed onset of rains in the north and there'll be early onset of rains in the south. As a matter of fact, in Lagos, it is expected that we would have above normal rainfall. What are the signs that you're seeing about this particular weather prediction informing agricultural activities by both government and, in fact, in the value chain of the agricultural sector, even in the private sector, that there are preparations for climate-smart agriculture that would, tackle what would be a negative impact of the adverse effects of climate change following this particular prediction for 2025?
Okay, thank you so much. I would like to applaud the different agency and government ministry who are working tirelessly to provide farmers with this information, especially like the NIMET and the prediction of the early onset of rainfall and the late onset in the different zones and areas in Nigeria. However, one challenge is that the local farmers do not have access to this information. Most time it is being aired in the news, and the rural farmers sometimes do not even have a common radio to listen to this program. So what am I saying in essence? It is not enough for us to have this data, but if the end users of this data are not rightly informed, this is where we have issues. Year in, year out, we have this data. We try to produce and to monitor climate change and also the events that would come into play during the seasons of rainfall and after rainfall, the early onset. But on that point, I think we need to do more to be able to cascade this information to the farmers who need it in the rural areas. And I'm not saying urban farming has not been into play in Nigeria. We have urban farmers too, but we know that the rural area are the most producers of the food we have in Nigeria. Also, it is important for us to develop policies that would address the issue of climate change. This is training these farmers. If you have the information and you don't have the requisite training to be able to respond actively and to be able to improve your production within this time frame, it becomes very difficult for you to utilize the information. So I am looking more, we need to look more on the utilization of this information. Also, we need to train farmers on different climate smart.
I'm sure that there's a lot you want to share with us, but we just are trying to manage time. But I think it's an ongoing conversation, and we thank you for your advocacy and what you're doing. Pauline Opara, Head Food Security and Livelihood and Action Against Hunger, who joined us from Abuja studios. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we will take a quick break, and this time, just relax, chill. It's Wednesday morning, the midweek edition. Let's bring you something different. After the break, join us again.
He said dollar don't be 1,600. Say that we no get care to sit 100. Boss, $7，蜜豆出是$1，我今提手1、2、3，蜜豆滚地是上班。Say believe in God and you know they like champ. Say it like the way everywhere everything come. Can I just orosune yache mana sam? Knock sword for your head you will get cartel. Like na hotel, who talk come? Na the cartel, Martel, na hotel, who talk come?
There you go. His real name actually is Bakari Babatunde Ibrahim, but we all know him as Master Lee. Ni hao.
Ni hao.
How you doing?
I'm good, boss.
So first, let's talk about that viral moment. Okay. I have seen thousands of videos, literally, of people just remaking that moment. I don't know if you thought it was going to go viral with Magneto, but speak to us. What inspired it? I will still get you to do it, but what exactly happened there? Come on.
It's just one of those things we do when a song is kind of trending or moving viral. We just have to just jump on it and try to make our own version. So I do the Chinese version for songs and stuff. So I got a call from Magneto that, can you come and just... It's not like an official music. Yeah. So we had to just jump on it for just viral video on TikTok and stuff. And when I got there, we made this song, I think it's the middle of the night or so.
Middle of the night?
Yeah, because I had to move from Chevron to Lekki just to get that thing done. And we made that stuff around, I think, October last year. And it started going viral, like, was in November, December. And people started using it for the Christmas stuff. Am I getting my girlfriend a Christmas gift, or I should sing in Chinese? So started having different caption for it. So that's how we go viral. And January, February, until now.
And you said dollar is what? 1,000.
1,600. I think it's still 600.
You know, so maybe do another version. They said dollar don't be 1,000 now.
No, or maybe to come down, right? maybe.
Amazing.
Versions like that.
It's quite interesting, your journey and how little moments can become very big for you. So tell us how you are internalizing this space you found yourself, because I know that lots of people come out with content creation and they are hoping that something could come out of it. Some are just doing it, one day it could happen, then boom. Sometimes what they strategically position to do is not what will, in the words of Nigerians, blow. It's what they just play around that finally, gets explosive. So tell us how you're internalizing this new space you found yourself.
I might say I've been in this game for a while right now. Yeah. I've been doing this since 20 let me say 2012.
Yeah, I found
school.
you about 5 years ago.
Yeah, 2012 in school.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, Lagos State University. And starting officially after service, that was in 2016, going on internet, trying to put video there. So I think I've had like several limelights at the point, but this is actually one of it also. So I think I've tried my best to manage this situation at the point because I've had experience before now. So I've had people call me, okay, we'll have to do this now that you're trending, we have to do this. And I will have people that want to like get from it, and we have people that want to like help to make it go more bigger than that. So managing it is not something that is stressful for me because I know my planning already. I know what to do, and my teams are like working towards
Fantastic.
it. Yeah.
You know, 2012 is a long time, and it reminds me of what they say, that, you know, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And you know, the scientist who turned on the light bulb, he tried many times before eventually hit the golden moment. And it speaks to your effort as well. You know, one can hardly tell the difference between the real Mandarin and your own version of Mandarin. I'm looking forward to hearing that, by the way. But let's talk about what seems to be, you know, regulation that government is trying to introduce into the space. Prior to this time, we've heard the Video Censors Board talking about the possibility of regulating registration for content producers because there's so much online. And we're hearing again in the last 12 hours that social media companies will have offices, should be having offices in the country as it is done in other parts of the world. What are your reflections, and indeed perhaps you've had these conversations with other content creators in the country about, you know, how this would change the social media landscape in
It's still a bill, by the way. It's not a law just yet. Yeah.
But when you say regulation, I think regulation is actually good in every aspect. If you have a body, if you have a kind of entertainment or any sector, if you have something that, or a body that is regulating it, it helps. Now, coming to entertainment and social media, people can just pick up their phone and do anything they want. So, but when you have the government regulating it, telling you this is what you should do on social media, this is what you should not do on social media, just to not put things that are not acceptable. Because now, if you talk about TV stations like this, we have what we can do and what we cannot do. Now, coming on social media, we have people, even those that are learned and not learned, that come on social media and try to put some because they have their phone and internet. So now, if you have the government telling us that they want to regulate something, I think whatever thing they are bringing out should be something that we can meet in the middle and say, okay, this is good. So I don't think it's something bad. I think...
So, but you believe that you should be consulted? Because I looked at the people sponsoring the bill. Some of them are far away from Gen Zs. We are even closer to Gen Zs. They are their ancestors when it comes to Gen Zs, you know, the people that have pushed this. So would you advocate that before any of such bill passes, they must bring the younger people to the table?
Of course, because obviously the younger people are the one in, like, I'm not saying they are not on social media, they are, but we are the one running the social media right now. So we have to be consulted, we have to be there to see that, okay, this cannot work, this is how it should work. Yes, we know we are going to do like this, but this is how it should work because this is what we are seeing and doing on the social media platform. So I think they might not have everything, like they don't have all the details. We have details right now, so we can like table it and they table it. So they have to consult.
Yeah, it is why I'm asking that question so they can hear you and call you.
But that element is absent. So would you be proposing that, you know, content creators, Association of Content Creators, be making a presentation to the Minister of Creative Economy?
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a very good idea if they have to say, okay, maybe they create the group or a community in the social media world to represent so as to bring them to the front of the government and say, okay, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, because we're concerned about gagging your freedom of expression.
And creativity as well. But in any case, this is still a bill process. There'll still be a public hearing, right? And we expect that all of this will come in. But, you know, people discovered your Mandarin part, and I think this is the longest I've heard you speak English. You've spoken English for almost 10 minutes. But you used to do Indian... you know, used to do Ghanaian content. I think a lot of people, at some point, Ghana was on you because it's Ghanaian content. So people from Ghana will come and say, no, this is not us. So it just speaks to how versatile you are. Some people just discovered this Mandarin or side of you, but you've been doing a lot more.
But what really happened is I started with Chinese, like I said, 2012. It's just like me coming out in the front of audience in school, like 100, I think, audience, and I had to like speak Chinese, make my comedy around Chinese, and they were like, oh, where's this guy from?
So let's converse in your version of Mandarin now. I don't know what you want to do, but we'd like to have a conversation with you this morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go, start.
What's that?
What did you hear?
I heard Ogbomi, which is Yoruba for you.
No, there's something you guys don't understand. So there is one the history that I always say. There was a particular time in history. Do you know the Chinese migrated from a part in West Africa? You don't know?
Now
so they were migrating, and there was a part they call Shintaolo.
Shintaolo.
So they stopped there, and there is a little community there called Iroya. That was where they settled. So those Yoruba people started the Chinese community. Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone. No, nobody's listening. So finally, do that line, that famous line that is now trending now. So I'll do beats for you.
I don't know if I can get this lead.
No, as short as you can. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, Master Lee, thank you for the work you're doing. I love that you're able to put smiles on people's faces with your creativity.
Absolutely.
We know that this is just the start. Don't worry, greater things are coming. But ladies and gentlemen, Master Lee, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
So let's quickly touch base with Port Harcourt, the River State capital. After the declaration of state of emergency, our correspondent Deborah Agbalama joins us now. Deborah, what is the mood like in Port Harcourt right now?
Good morning to you guys in the studio. And well, for Port Harcourt this morning, everything is normal. People are going about their normal activities. But one thing is very, very auspicious is the fact that there is zero police presence on the streets of Port Harcourt this morning. And well, people would think that you would have the military replace these policemen at a different checkpoint, but that's not what's happening. There are no military presence at all on the streets. And even I took a drive around the government house front and back gates. There's still no presence of the military around those areas. I'm standing right here at Eastern Bypass roundabout, a very popular roundabout in Port Harcourt. And as you can see, everywhere seems pretty normal. People are going about their duties. And well, we don't know how it's going to pan out later on the day. But for now, I can say that everywhere is calm. Everywhere is peaceful. The sights and sound of Port Harcourt feels like nothing happened, like it's a regular, normal day. That's what I can say from where I'm standing right now.
All right. So, Deborah, thank you so much for your reporting. We hope that it stays that way. I'm sure that's the expectation of the president who made that proclamation so that things don't escalate beyond what it is. Thank you, Deborah Agbalama, for joining us from Port Harcourt. And you can stay with Channels Television. We'll bring you up to speed as every hour, literally, or every 2 hours, or every minute, if you will, as to what's happening in the city of Port Harcourt. Most thank you for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Uzonga. Bye-bye.
Of course, the conversation continues, but ultimately we hope and pray that peace reigns in River State and across the land. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Sunrise Daily is next with that conversation and more. I'm Kaido Kikulif. Goodbye.